What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with our college football playoff rankings for week 12. And before we get into it, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Just 200 subscribers, we'll be doing that autograph item giveaway, autograph cards, memorabilia. All you guys got to do is just hit that subscribe button to be entered into that giveaway. But before we get into who is going to be ranked, we got to look at the teams that dropped from the rankings. And Ty, which one of these three are you kind of most surprised about falling out?
I would say Illinois just because it's not like they're losing to world beaters right now. They've lost two in a row to Michigan State and Purdue, both at home. And, I thought they were going to win the West going away by two or three games, and now they've basically given it away. Unless they can shock Michigan, they're pretty much done.
Yeah, and then obviously you see Liberty and Illinois staying put here. But the others receiving votes, we have Oklahoma State, and then some teams you probably aren't really thinking about right now with UTSA, the Roadrunners, and Troy. And, those teams have had solid seasons, so I feel like we had to give them some credit. But Ty, I'll let you take over here at 25.
Yeah, at 25, we have NC State, a team that's been just really up and down this year. Coming off that big win over Wake Forest, they get a really bad home loss to Boston College, a team who was just at the very bottom, basically, of the ACC. So, real head scratcher there. The defense just gave it up at the end. I mean, they've played great all year, but couldn't hold their own against Boston College. And now it's looking like a 9-3 ceiling for NC State in a season where it looked like they might turn a corner.
Then at 24, we got Coastal Carolina jumping back into our rankings. And they had a close win, so I couldn't move them all the way up. But at 9-1, it's hard to not put a team into our rankings. They look pretty good right now in the Sun Belt, looking for probably a championship berth there. And this team has a Virginia matchup, so a non-conference matchup here late in the season at Virginia. And if they get that win, obviously it's an ACC team, and it's going to look better for the Chanticleers.
All right, 23, we got Notre Dame. Not quite as high on them as the AP and CFP polls. I think you have to take into account that Marshall loss. I think that still has to weigh on their resume a little bit. And then this week they had a close game with Navy, who's 3-7 right now. So obviously that's not super impressive. But this team is starting to really get clicking on offense. Obviously, there was that crazy catch, probably the catch of the year early in this game against Navy. So they're really starting to find their stride, and I think USC is going to be on upset alert in 2 weeks.
22, we got the Beavers jumping back in as well. A big win over Cal puts them back into our rankings. They played well and secured their second winning season in a row in the Pac-12, and the Pac-12 has been, very competitive this year, and it's a good sign to see for the Pac-12 because normally it's only been one team, and if they lose, then no shot at a playoff berth. But they're still alive here in week 12, but the Beavers are pretty much looking to play spoiler here these last 2 weeks.
All right, 21, Florida State jumps into the rankings. A dominant win at Syracuse, a team who was almost a top 10 team 4 weeks ago. Obviously, now they've fallen off, but that's still a big win, and that's coming off another dominant win at Miami. So, two just blowout wins on the road. Say what you want about those two teams, but that's still pretty impressive. And Florida State is really turning their season around, and it looks like they're going in the right direction here under Mike Norvell. If they can get through this week, and then get that rivalry win over Florida. I think you call this a successful season, and you can say they're going in the right direction.
At 20, we got Kansas State moving up, and this is in part to them absolutely throttling Baylor. Will Howard stepped in for Adrian Martinez and put on a show, coming in quick relief and doing so well. I think just because he's already played a few games this year. Martinez has been hurt, so he does have the experience. And, the Big 12 title hopes are still alive after this win. They pretty much have to win out and a few things to happen to get there. But, it is a very likely path.
All right, at 19, Cincinnati moves up. They win a back and forth game over East Carolina, a team who's played spoiler to a couple teams already this year. So they just keep winning. They are probably the least talked about 8-2 team you'll see, especially coming off a playoff berth last year. They're still right in the thick of things in the American, and they could find themselves playing a really solid team in the Cotton Bowl at the end of the year if they can keep winning.
At 18, we got another American team, and it's the Tulane Green Wave only dropping one spot. And you're probably going to guess who's going to be at 17. But this team, they looked really well, but they just had to play catch up the whole game, and it just wasn't enough for that comeback bid. And there's three teams tied at 5-1: Cincinnati, Tulane, and UCF, which you're going to see up next here. And pretty much one of those three teams is going to be the non-Power 5 team representing in the New Year's Six bowl game. So it's really going to come down to the conference championship and to see who gets there.
And at 17, we have UCF, who beat Tulane this week to take the lead really as the top dog for the group of five. They are the highest ranked group of five team, and I'm assuming they will be here coming up in a couple hours again this week. If they didn't have that loss to East Carolina, they'd be possibly knocking on the door of top 15 or top 10 maybe. But overall, it's a really successful season here for Gus Malzahn, and I think similar to Florida State, they're really going in the right direction under a new coach. So I think you got to watch out for them moving forward.
16, we got the Bruins after an awful loss at home to Arizona. They can kiss their college football playoff chances goodbye, especially in the Pac-12. But it is a quick turnaround. And now, do you want to ruin the whole conference chance at a, no bid in the playoff for this year? And, they're going to play spoiler against USC at home. Obviously, it's a big game for both of these programs, not just, history and the rivalry, but for Pac-12 title hopes as well. And if they want to win this game, you're going to have a repeat performance out of Charbonnet, maybe even better, because that USC rush defense can get gashed at times. But UCLA has to be consistent with their play. If they can put up, kind of a similar performance and defense plays a tiny bit better, then it'll be a really good game.
15, we have Washington coming off probably the stunner of the week at Oregon. Just a huge win to really vault themselves into not really the Pac-12 race, I guess. They're kind of out of that, but they have a chance maybe for a New Year's Six, like an outside shot. But either way, another team, first year head coach, and I think this is as good a first season as they could have asked for. Now they have Colorado at home and then Washington State in the Apple Cup. So a good chance for them to finish 10-2 and a couple really huge wins this year to bank on.
14, we got Penn State moving up one. And, they dominated from the first snap, led 27-0 at half, held Maryland to just under 150 total yards. They ran for 250 and 2 touchdowns. I mean, Clifford barely even had to do anything except throw, dink and dunk passes essentially. And this team, it's been talked about, they're 8-2, so they got to be middle of the pack. But a lot of people on Twitter have been saying, what would this team do in other conferences? And I think, Pac-12, they're probably 10-0. I think ACC, probably 10-0. Obviously American 10-0. SEC, maybe 1-2 loss, kind of the same position as they're in the Big Ten. But unfortunately, there has to be that one team every year on that side with Penn State, Ohio State, and Michigan that doesn't really, live up to the expectations that they hoped, but they still have a really good year. And unfortunately, this year it is going to be those Nittany Lions.
All right, at 13, we got Utah, a team who lost 2 times early in the season, and everyone just kind of wrote them off. But all they've done since then is win games. I think this is 6 in a row now for the Utes, and with only one conference loss, they still have a good chance to get to the Pac-12 championship. And that's all on the line this weekend as they go to Autzen to take on Oregon. If they can win that game, then they can pretty much book their ticket to the Pac-12 championship because they have Colorado after that. So this is the do or die week for them. I know they're already out of the playoff, but obviously you could still salvage a really good season if they could get to the Pac-12 championship and potentially win it.
At 12, we got Ole Miss falling just a little bit here out of the top 10. That's in part to the game at Alabama. You go almost win, almost on a miracle, their best performance to say the least, but they just couldn't do it. The defense let them down in the end. And, that's just more of Bryce Young being Bryce Young. And they let them score 4 consecutive drives, pretty much ending up in points. And you can't have that happen against Alabama when you're ahead to, really keep them in the game. And that's what cost them in the end. Jackson Dart played a pretty solid game. But, the 4th and whatever it was, and he threw it to the end zone. Maybe it wasn't the right decision, but, he gave his team a shot until the very end.
All right, Oregon dropping out of the top 10 here to number 11. Playoff hopes are gone, essentially. They really had a good chance. I think if they won out, they were going to get in to the playoff. And I don't think they played terrible. Bo Nix had a solid game, not his best, but still threw for 280 and 2 touchdowns. I don't think they played too bad. I think Washington just played their best game of the season, and Michael Penix really just balled out. But obviously, everyone's going to point to that fourth down call where they went for it on their own 30-yard line with Bo Nix on the sideline, currently injured. So I think that's a call you'll look back on if Oregon wins out, wins the Pac-12, and people will say, well, maybe if they punted, they'd be in the playoff.
And then starting our top 10, yes, we have those North Carolina Tar Heels, and they get a very tough win on the road at Wake Forest to a very good team that, I think the beginning of the year was one of the preseason favorites to win this conference. And, Sam Hartman really put on a show, and so did Drake May, who is still not getting enough credit in the Heisman race. If this team, wins the ACC, do you put them in the playoff? I think you have to at this point. That one loss was a tough loss early in the year. And since then, they've just been on a roll. The shot at Clemson is pretty much guaranteed at this point in the ACC championship. And that's going to be the game at the end of the year where we're going to see who has the best chance to get into the playoff, because obviously next week, Ohio State and Michigan, one of them's not going to win and not make the Big Ten championship. So lots are on the line here in these next coming weeks in the ACC.
And at number 9, we have Clemson. A lot of people just completely wrote them off. Oh, Clemson's done after they got blown out by Notre Dame. And if they win out, it's not really just control their own destiny situation. They're gonna need some help. But if they win out, get to 12-1 with a conference championship, I think they do have a chance to make the playoff, potentially over a one-loss Michigan or Ohio State. So everything is still on the table for Clemson. They're not done by any means, and they have 2 easy games leading up to that ACC championship. So it's really just going to come down to whether they can beat North Carolina. But at worst, if they can get that win, they'll be in the Orange Bowl, and they'll still have a chance to salvage a really good season.
And at 8, we got Alabama jumping back into the top 10 after they went on the road and played Ole Miss. And, they got that big win after a tough loss against LSU. And this Bama team just hasn't looked like the Bama teams that we've been accustomed to seeing. They've played a lot of close games, the Texas game, this game. I mean, this team right now could be 6-4 if you want to flip the script and it's one possession games go the other way. And Bama, might probably not be in our rankings just with those 4 losses to some really good teams. But the big storyline here is Bryce Young obviously having another stellar performance. Yeah, it might not look like it on the stat sheet. 3 touchdowns is good. 209 yards passing. It's pretty good as well. But Bama, it just doesn't seem right. But, this week, I think you're going to see some huge numbers to boost, Bryce Young's Heisman race, if you want to call it that. Just because they're going against Austin Peay, who's a very bad team. So they should get to 9-2 and at least be 8th or higher next week.
All right, LSU jumps up to number 7. I guess Vegas knew something. I was really surprised at that small spread against Arkansas, but I guess a little bit of a letdown coming off a huge win over Alabama the week before. So, that's what good teams do. You have that letdown game, but they still managed to get the road win against a decent team in Arkansas. So now coming in at 8-2, they've already won the SEC West. They have a game against UAB, so basically a cupcake game this week. And they go to Texas A&M, where the last game of the year looked like a really tough game at the start of the year. Obviously now it's a dumpster fire there. So odds are they'll be 10-2 going into that Georgia game, and they'll have a very strong argument to make the playoff if they can win that.
And at 6, we got USC after dismantling Colorado at home. The last 3 quarters of the game, so not the first quarter. They scored 53 points and really took it to them, really got some pep in their step. And this is the only hope for the Pac-12 essentially to get into the playoff. And what better way to do it with your rival this week on the road? Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson are calling the game at night. So something they're not accustomed to doing, meaning it's a really big game. And if they can go in there, get the win, then, they might change my mind in possibly squeaking into the playoff, because their loss was on a 2-point conversion to Utah, who, you said almost everyone's written off already, but they're still a solid team. And, if they don't get that 2-point conversion, you're probably a 10-0 right now and in fourth in our college football playoff rankings. But, that's not the case. And best case scenario is a team in front of them loses eventually. But if it's Michigan or Ohio State, is it going to be enough for USC to go past them?
And Tennessee staying put at number 5. Not quite as big of a blowout as it looks on the stat sheet. They just dominated the third and fourth quarters, but this was a close game deep into the first half. But either way, they win by 42. So, and they put up 700 yards. So either way, it's another win for Tennessee, and they're a team that I think if they win out, they're most likely in the playoff. I think it'd be really hard to put LSU in over Tennessee, even if they beat Georgia, because Tennessee blew out LSU on the road, and they would have one less loss than LSU. So I think that'd be really hard to do. So the way I see it, if Tennessee wins out, I'll give them a 90% chance to get into the playoff.
And then at 4, we got TCU staying put, and this was more on the defense than the offense in this one. Max Duggan had a decent game, nothing spectacular, but there wasn't much to come by in this game. And they went on the road, won at Texas, limited Quinn Ewers to a very dismal game. And now that they showed signs of life on that defense, really makes me think that this TCU team is legit. We're going to find out here in the Big 12 championship, whoever they play. It's, someone's going to go for their neck and try to not get them into the playoff, because we saw last year, Oklahoma State, if they score that touchdown, they're probably in the playoff last year. But that's a few weeks away. They got Baylor this week on the road. Should be another easy win for them to move to 11-0 and 8-0 in the conference.
And at number 3, Michigan staying put here. Their second half adjustments continue to come through, outscoring them 17-0 in the second half. And it's just another boring game, probably for someone who's not really affiliated with either team. That's pretty much what all Michigan games have been this year. Just runs between 4 and 12 yards on offense almost the whole game, and occasional plays made by J.J. McCarthy, but that's just all it's been taken. Michigan just pretty much runs the ball twice as much as they pass it because they can, not really because they can't pass, but we'll see if that can hold up against Ohio State like it did last year, and if the defense can hold their own like they have been against inferior opponents.
And at 2, we got the Ohio State Buckeyes, who pretty much took it to Indiana in the second half. But the big storyline for them was Miyan Williams going down, and he didn't return, having a good first half. But, what I've heard so far is Trayvon Henderson's looking healthy. Miyan Williams said he's fine and he'll be healthy for this week at Maryland. So the running back room is getting healthy just in time for the game next week against Michigan. But the big storyline for Ohio State today or last week was the 5th-year wide receiver Babb getting his first touchdown. Multiple ACL injuries, leg injuries and whatnot. He battled through a lot just to get to this moment and still be on the team. His teammates obviously voted him as a captain as well. So it shows a lot about his character and him as a person as well. And of course, he gets rewarded at the end there from Stroud to pat his stats a little bit for the Heisman. But, end of the day, it's going to shape up 11-0 versus 11-0 next week. And we're going to see who's going to be staying probably at 2.
And number 1, we have Georgia. Big surprise. I mean, they just continue to dominate. The game got a little close. I think Mississippi State pulled within 12 there late in the second half, but Georgia ends up putting them away like they have with every team this year. They obviously have that 46-point win over Oregon. They have the 14-point win over Tennessee, but they dominated that game. So they're far and away the best team. And their record might as well say 12-0. I don't see them losing to Kentucky, a team who just lost to Vanderbilt, and then they get Georgia Tech. So they should be 12-0, and if that's the case, they're in. It doesn't even matter if they win the SEC championship; they'll be in regardless.
That's gonna be it for the video today. If you guys liked it, hit that like button down below. Comment below what you think the top 4 should be next week and this week as well. But until the next time, the Bench Buddies are out.
She never called back.